Hello, my name is Crystal Tribbett, and on behalf of Orange County Archives in Action, I would like to welcome you to our second webinar. We are very excited to host a fantastic event for you today. Before our panel begins, I'd like to tell you a bit about Orange County Archives in Action. It is a group dedicated to bringing together libraries, special collections, museums, cultural heritage institutions, and community members to highlight the known and unknown stories of Orange County. By doing so, we aim to increase awareness and improve access to OC's unique history from a variety of perspectives. We are especially committed to bringing the histories of communities underrepresented, misrepresented, or absent from narratives about the OC region to the forefront and support communities telling their own stories on their own terms. We believe in the power of archives to cultivate understanding and respect, foster collaboration, and build community. Orange County Archives in Action is a group of volunteers. This year's team consists of myself. I am curator of Orange County Regional History at UC Irvine, Patricia Prestonary, archivist and special collections librarian at Cal State Fullerton, Nicole Grimes, library specialist for Anaheim Public Library, and Jamie Hiver, executive director at the Heritage Museum of Orange County. You may know Orange County Archives in Action as a group that has organized the Orange County Archives Bazaar over the past several years. The first OC Archives Bazaar was held on November 3rd, 2018 at the Bowers Museum in Santa Ana. Originally named OC Archives, OC Archives in Action, a regional archives bazaar. The day-long event was a great success. Over 25 exhibitors and 200 visitors attended. Following the positive reception of the first bazaar, the planning committee rebranded the bazaar as the Orange County Archives Bazaar and named the planning committee Orange County Archives in Action. The second annual OC Archives Bazaar took place on October 26, 2019 at the Hilbert Museum of California Art in Orange. The theme for that year's bazaar was murals, memories, and meaning making. In response to the pandemic, we decided to host a series of virtual talks focused on activism and social justice history in Orange County. We look forward to hosting the third Orange County Archives Bazaar this year in person in 2022. So please stay connected so that you can learn about when this will take place as we are in the process of planning it. I'd like to turn our program over now to Nicole Grimes, who's going to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Crystal. All right, so we have a fabulous host of panelists for you today, one of which is Diann Marsh. Diann began her career as a volunteer in the historic preservation field in the late 1970s after hearing state historian Aaron Gallup talk about the National Register program at the Second State Conference in Pasadena. In 1981, she was hired by the state of California as the coordinator for the 1982 California Historic Preservation Conference held in Orange County. Her first professional historic survey job in Escondido led to her surveying over 10,000 historic buildings in many cities in Southern California. During her over 25 years in Southern California, she placed 4 historic districts and over 40 of Southern California's valuable historic buildings on the National Register. She has written 14 local history books and contributed to many articles on the subject of saving historic buildings to various publications. We also have Phyllis Mueller. Phyllis Mueller has worked an impressive 29 years in local government, spanning 5 cities and numerous positions. In Anaheim, Phyllis led city staff during the historic preservation movement, which resulted in the establishment of the city's first historic district, the Anaheim Colony Historic District Preservation Plan, the implementation of the Mills Act program, and the recognition of plaque program for Mills Act property owners. In retirement, Phyllis enjoys reading, travel, and spending time with her family, don't we all? Nguyen. Christine is the Historic Preservation Planner for the City of Anaheim. Christine's responsibilities include the management of the 3rd largest Mills Act program in the state and providing assistance to historic property owners for the identification and protection of their historic resources. She serves as staff liaison to the local Historic Preservation Committee and is an active member in the California Preservation Foundation. She is also the founder of the Orange County Historic Preservation Planner Working Group which currently represents 19 jurisdictions across Orange, Los Angeles, and Riverside counties. Christine has worked in municipal government for over 13 years, including positions at the County of Orange, City of Seal Beach, and Anaheim Public Utilities. She has a bachelor's degree in architecture from Kansas State University and a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of California, Irvine. She has also earned her LEED AP credential through the U.S. Green Building Council and a Governor's Award for Achievement in Historic Preservation. And last but certainly not least, we have Meghan Shigo. Meghan and her husband, Tim, bought their first historic home in the city of Anaheim in 1997, and they had no idea what would go into that. The very next year, their neighborhood was on its way to becoming a historic district, and Meghan soon found herself interested in historic preservation. Meghan joined the Historic Preservation Committee in 1999 and has assisted with the review of new residential and commercial construction in the historic districts, yearly inspections and reviews of Mills Act homes, and was quite involved with the second award-winning historic preservation plan for the city of Anaheim. Meghan and Tim have restored 7 properties in the Colony District, and she currently works as a realtor. So now you know our esteemed panelists, and we're going to begin with our program. Phyllis, would you be so kind as to introduce us?
Yes, I would like to give a brief overview. Can you hear me? All right, good. First of all, sociologists tell us that when people attend webinars like this and they wake up the next morning, they'll only remember 10% of what was said. So I'm hoping maybe when you wake up tomorrow, it'll be 20%. By way of the big picture, Anaheim is associated with Disneyland, right? You get off the 5 freeway and there you are. Or the Angel Stadium, you get off another off-ramp and there you are. However, if you get off at Lincoln or Harbor, you'll find yourself in or near one of our historic districts. This is where Diann Marsh and her family moved to North Philadelphia in 1975. Hi, Keith. The house is on the National Register. And then in the late 90s, both Meghan and I moved to this beautiful street in the historic district, Clementine. She still lives there, but I moved to South Ohio. And all of our houses are Mills Act houses. I think that's all I'm going to say, except for my last point, that I would like you to wake up tomorrow remembering, and that this was a grassroots effort from bottom on up. It was ordinary people like you and me who formed the districts that we're going to learn about today. And I have to tell you that it wasn't just the grassroots people, but it was city support as well, with Lisa Stepkovich as the head of the Department of Community Development. And she's going to tell you all about that too. So I turn it back to you, Nicole.
Thanks, Phyllis. Diann, would you be so kind as to tell us about your story and your experience?
Oh, we moved to Anaheim, like Phyllis said, in 1975. For 23 years, my husband and I had talked about owning an old house and wanting that experience of living in a historic neighborhood. Well, by then we were married 23 years and we had 5 of our children still at home. So we moved to Anaheim. We didn't know anyone. And I asked someone, well, who do I ask about history? I'm really interested in history. And they said, well, go see Andrew Deneau. So I knocked on his door and he said, well, he says, I'm just beginning this program to put the Carnegie Library on the as a historic monument and to become a museum. And I've invited a lot of people to this meeting, and would you like to come? Well, I went, and there were all these people that lived in Anaheim since 1917, and there was me. But I stuck with it, and I got to be very close friends with Andy. Andy was a genius at historic architecture, and also his family had been in Anaheim since 1917. So he was very involved with the history also. He was also, people were jealous of him because he had been able to buy the most beautiful colonial revival house in all of Anaheim, and they thought for a 27-year-old man that they should be owning it. One of them should be owning it and not him. So he kind of took it on the chin sometimes because of that. We started our group as quite a large group, kind of a divided group. We ended up with half of the people wanting to focus on the Carnegie Library as a museum, and the other half wanting to save other buildings in Anaheim, as they thought that many of them were very expensive, very good buildings. Downtown Anaheim at that time was a very lively Main Street. There were good clothing stores, there were furniture stores. There was really a very good community, active and alive in downtown Anaheim when redevelopment was formed. So Andy and I got involved. We decided that we thought all of the historic buildings in Anaheim were important. So we and 10 others formed a group that became the Anaheim Historical Society, and we were concerned about historic preservation in the downtown especially. Well, Andy and I went to the second Historic Preservation Conference, and it was held in Pasadena. Pasadena was the avant-garde of all of historic preservation for California. They just did everything before the rest of us. And there we met Aaron Gallup, and he introduced this lady, a white-haired lady, elderly lady, and told how wonderful she was for having placed several buildings on the National Register. And he was in charge of that program, and he explained it, and we were very impressed. A couple weeks later, we went to see the redevelopment director in downtown Anaheim. He was really mean. He was picked because he was mean. And he said, well, if those buildings are on the National Register, then we would save them. We thought, well, we can do that. So we did write an application for 44 buildings in downtown Anaheim. The National Register hearings are public hearings, and everyone can attend. So we got to our public hearing, and over on the other side of the aisle were 40 people that own buildings downtown and were hoping to make a mint on their buildings. And over on our side were 4 of us, Andy and I, and a couple that was the minister and his wife on one of the churches in the historic district. Well, they really had a lot to say about why none of those buildings were historic. But we got up and said our piece, and believe it or not, our application passed. That's something that always is said for both the state historic commission. They are always on our side. They are always for historic buildings. And then the staff and the historic preservation office in Sacramento, they always stood up for us. They always helped us best they could. They took terrible telephone calls from developers, and they had to stick up for the National Register program, and they always did. But the director himself was not always that for historic preservation, because he was chosen by the governor, so his attitude was different. Well, our application passed and was sent on to Washington, It sat on the governor's desk for a long, long time. Finally, it was sent on. Anaheim sent people to Washington, of course, and of course we couldn't afford to go, so they turned it down on the basis of the application didn't include any archaeology. So it was turned down, but we still kept forward. We did the application for the Carnegie Library, and all of the buildings that we did applications for after that were put on the register. And it was a very contentious time. Twice when we went to public hearings, there were, there was a ring of federal troopers or state troopers around the room guarding us because someone's life had been threatened. So it was a very serious time at that time, and we really felt very strongly about saving the buildings in Anaheim. Well, I was on a committee that was formed to put public input on redevelopment. I represented the Historical Society, and Susan Schick, secondary person in redevelopment, got up and she says we're going to tear down all of the houses in the redevelopment area, which is like 20 blocks. I said, you can't do that. She says, oh, those people don't care. So someone from the neighborhood lived across from the fire station. He and I made flyers and passed them out over the weekend before the Tuesday night meeting. We got 72 mad people to the meeting. And of course, the redevelopment says, oh, we can't have this. There's just too many people here. We just are going to close this meeting and have it later. And by that time, they had turned it into 7 districts, which is a way of saying divide and conquer, which by dividing us, they could conquer us. Well, some of the people didn't like redevelopment people. They just didn't want to meet with the city people. They just didn't like them. And the Melrose, district felt the same way, but a few of their people really stuck with it. And one of the ladies paid for all the pictures for our National Register application. We put a district for 72 houses on the public hearing for the National Register, and we showed up as usual, and our opponents showed up as usual, and they got up and they said why those buildings shouldn't be on the register. And the chairman of the commission said, you should be ashamed of yourself. If any community, Anaheim needs low and moderate income housing, and that's what this is. It passed there, and it passed in Washington. And meanwhile, our friends on one of the groups that really opposed redevelopment, they finally, after like 7 or 8 years, caught redevelopment in something that was not proper, and they got a hearing, and they got that district saved, and they got a lot of 13 houses that the city had bought and was letting fall apart. They got them redone by 30 street architects and restored and bought by the public. And at that time, we found a house in Santa Ana, Italianate house up on blocks that had to be saved. And we had one day to say we'd take it to save it or it was going to be torn down. So that's what we did. We moved to Santa Ana to restore a house there.
Oh my gosh.
But I've always loved Anaheim still.
Well, thank you so much, Diann. Did you want to speak a little bit about the Kramer Building and SQR store with the Gladding McBean tile?
There were Gladding McBean tiles all over downtown Anaheim. They were just beautiful, very, very strong, very well-built concrete blocks, and they were just all over Anaheim, and they were really beautiful, and they were very strong, and they just really said something about the beauty of Anaheim. I think that company is still in business, and there are a whole lot of those tiles in the back of in our backyard in our neighborhood in Santa Ana. So, but they last forever. They're concrete, and they were just in almost every building in downtown Anaheim.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Diann, for sharing your experience. Next up, we'll be hearing from Phyllis Mueller.
Thank you, Diann. That was a wonderful presentation. It brings back a lot of memories of the struggles that you had in your passion for historic preservation. And I want to say hello to Tom and Ani and Steve and Alone and Marcia and Ken and Andrew and Nancy and Gloria and Kathy and everybody else. Okay, so what you are looking at is the historic districts of Anaheim. The green one is the first one, the biggest one, and that's the Anaheim Colony Historic District. And I'll just spend a few minutes to tell you how that happened. This was after Diann had already left, but there are people who lived in that green space who got together for reasons I won't go into to think maybe we should form a historic district. And so what they did was they asked to speak with the department head, Lisa Stepkovich, and say, could we form a historic district? And unlike Diann's experience, we got a winner in that Lisa was not only receptive, but supportive and encouraging. And she put money where her mouth was. So we were able to hire not one, but two historic consultants, Architectural Resources Group and Historic Resources Group. And they guided the group, these people, ordinary, everyday people, through the process of getting the Anaheim Colony Historic District established. And they needed to identify within the boundaries of Northeast, South, and West, which houses were historic and which ones were not. And once they identified the houses, the committee, the Historic Preservation Committee, was trained in historic survey methods and given how many? 10, 20 houses to survey. And the surveys were done, there were about 160 of them that were turned in, which is really cool because that was like a 75% success rate for people, just ordinary, regular volunteers, non-paid, to do the surveys. And that resulted in the establishment of the district of the Anaheim Colony Historic District. And subsequent to that, the other ones that you see on the map there. And so it's a wonderful piece of Anaheim that the city is very proud of now. Lots of new developments are called Colony this or Colony that, right, Nicole?
Indeed.
Yes. And so that's in a nutshell, the story. And I'll be glad to answer any questions later. This is the Mother Colony House. This is the one that was built in 1857. And it's been beautifully maintained all these years. And it's open to the public for viewing, and guides take school children to the inside of the house to get a glimpse of history all those years ago. Hi, Ken. This is your house. This is one of the older ones. It used to be located where City Hall is now. It was moved a number of years ago to Vintage Lane. And this is one of my favorite postcards. This is Lemon Street alone. And it just shows what life was like on Lemon Street in probably the 20s or 30s. Look at those palm trees and all the craftsman homes.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we will be hearing from Meghan Shigo.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. It is such an honor to be on this panel with Diann and Phyllis. I respect them very much, and I like to hear the recounting of their story. And I know Diann, when she came to town, there was a lot of the downtown that was being torn down and a lot of kind of ugly redevelopment. And then Phyllis, from her perspective as a homeowner here and an activist, developing the district and working with redevelopment, how things changed over the years. And then I come in 1997 when Tim and I bought our first house here on Clementine, and we had no idea that it was a historic district. We just knew that it was a beautiful street lined with palm trees. I mean, it looks like you're in somewhere really special when you're around the downtown, just gorgeous houses. And so this is kind of my story, being a citizen and being on the Historic Preservation Committee. So I was out front of our little bungalow at 626 North Clementine one day, and there was a lady and she was taking pictures of our house. And I thought, wow, my house is so beautiful. This lady is taking pictures. So I went to talk to her, and it was Gail Eastman. And at the time, she worked in the Historic Preservation Department. And what you'll hear throughout my recounting of my experience on the committee is that a lot of the committee members were not just on the Historic Preservation Committee, they also had their hands in other committees as well. And so it was really a great opportunity for us to sort of cross-pollinize with, other sources of funds or support or citywide support or that sort of thing. I mean, Gail went on to be a city councilwoman. She wrote a book, Anna's Home by the River. So we really had a lot of great movers and shakers on our committee, people that were really committed. So Gail informed me that we were going to be part of a historic district, and that is where I really gained a lot of interest and joined the committee. And I do have notes here today because Phyllis told me to stay focused, right, Phyllis?
Right.
And so I've made some notes here, so I might refer to them a little bit. But what I wanted to really say today was about it was already a historic district by the time I joined, and there was already a historic preservation plan. But by 2001, Phyllis and the other staff members really pushed forward so that we could get the Mills Act. And that was a really fun time to be a homeowner downtown, because people were so excited about not only having a plaque, but also, of course, you get a significant tax savings. I mean, most people on average, I think they save something like 56% of their property taxes in return for keeping the exterior of their house in good condition, as original as possible, obviously. So there's the plaque, there's the tax savings. So people were just out and about, and they were painting and doing landscaping and re-roofing, and they were talking to each other. And another realtor and I, Barbara, who was very much a historic preservation activist, Barbara Gonzalez, she and I would have different speakers come in and do workshops, and Cynthia Ward was busy doing lots of surveys. And so it was just a whole community effort. And eventually how it sort of evolved, and I think this is a really important piece, is that we went from one historic district to 4 historic districts. We went from being central downtown to being citywide. And when we did that, we did have to rewrite the historic plan. But that also required a lot of community support, even through the whole city of Anaheim. And I was the chair of the Community Development Block Grant Committee at the time. And so we were able to fund an entire staff position from those funds. And also we were able to take out loans to rehab and restore different projects. But probably the most significant project was the Anaheim packing house. And so we took out a bond or a loan on that. And so every year there's a certain amount that has to be paid back. But the city spent about $1.3 million to restore the building and make it just a habitable shell so that the lab could come in and create what they've created there. But that was really sort of duplicated all over downtown. And Nicole, if you could play the slideshow, please. So we use CDBG money to also restore a lot of other buildings. And also, if you hit play on there, Nicole, it'll just keep playing so we don't have to wait for it, just so people have something to look at as I'm talking. But also other committee members also were part of the Planning Commission. That was a huge deal. They were also part of a group. There was a CIM, a developer that came in that had to do a lot of infill projects all over downtown. And the group worked with CIM to come up with designs that would be sensitive to the fact that we were in a special place. And I have to say that redevelopment was Elisa and everybody and that staff, they were so supportive, but also Jane Newell, our historian that runs the history room in the library, she was just amazing, you know, because when you're trying to come up with designs for the downtown that look like they fit in, you really don't have to create, you know, a whole new design. You just kind of go back to pictures of how things used to be, and you try to put something together that really complements where you're at. So the committee worked with design review for restoration and for new construction. We were on the, like I said, the Community Development Block Grant Committee, on the Planning Commission, on the Arts and Cultural Heritage Committee. So we really were sort of everywhere and pulling all those resources together so that we could get the community support that we needed to make the citywide plan, and also to get the whole city to support the funds that we were spending on, you know, running the program and restoring buildings. And so with that was pretty much. Now, if we fast forward to now, there's not too much new construction. There's not too many, you know, empty lots or that sort of thing. So the committee, what we do is we drive past the houses that have the Mills Act once a year, and we just sort of do a sidewalk inspection and see that everything looks good, and we report back. And it's kind of a big process because there are quite a few Mills Act houses, so we have to split them up into groups and take pictures and all this sort of thing. So we meet to go over that, and then if there's any new projects, we will discuss that together. But it's sort of a maintenance plan now. But I did want to put a mention into that the second historic preservation plan that we wrote did receive an award through the California Preservation Foundation because it was such a well-written plan. And that was our goal when we wrote that plan, so that anybody could read it and understand what we were trying to do, and felt that we were approachable as a committee and as a community. So we would be a good resource for them to restore and keep what they have and add to our historic fabric of downtown Anaheim. Now, this is a project, this is in the 5 Points district, and this was a bungalow that we used to call the airbrush bunk building. And that's where the Ruby's is, over at Lincoln and West Street. and they were going to tear down the Rubies. They moved it 3 times. We affectionately call it the Flatiron Building, but I don't know if that's historically accurate what the name of it would be. But the property, the Flatiron Building, and then a few of the houses behind it, there was one that was restored, and I think there were 2 that were restored and 1 new construction. So like when that project came up, we worked with the developer, that was Stephanie Panilio, that we worked with to restore those properties. There were so many of them, so many properties to be restored back then, but that was fun, but not too much anymore. They're all pretty much restored and being used well. Now there's that clock on the top of that building there. I wasn't able to get a super great picture, but that's the Phyllis Mueller clock at the very top. She was insistent. Yes, yes. This project here, I don't know how many meetings we went to or how many hours. It was just grueling, but I think it turned out, I mean, as best as it could. And the clock's pretty cool. It changes colors at night, and you know, we stole a bunch of elements from, you know, other construction that was downtown to come up with that. So, oh, and we have a website, anaheimcolony.com, and it has resources for homeowners to restore and just the history of the neighborhood and the Mills Act. And so there you go. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Megan, so much. And now we will hear from Christine Nguyen.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for being here. We're really excited to share the sort of story of historic preservation in Anaheim. And so I'm Christine Nguyen. I am the City of Anaheim's Historic Preservation Planner. And I've been in this role since 2013. And I have the wonderful job of getting to continue on some of the work that these ladies started before me. So my role is, next slide, please, getting to work with all these historic districts that were already formed. So there's an image of where all 4 of our local historic districts and 2 National Register districts that we still have. And then we also continue to maintain a list of about 1,400 historic properties throughout Anaheim. Next slide. So those dots in this image show where all of our Mills Act properties are throughout the city. So as Megan mentioned, one of our most successful tools for preservation is continuing on the Mills Act program that Phyllis brought over. And this is an image of where in the historic districts these Mills Act properties are represented by the blue dots, and also throughout the city as well. Next slide. So just a general overview of what the Mills Act is and how the city uses it. It's a program that the state actually developed back in 1972, and it offers a tax reduction for homeowners or property owners that are willing to maintain and rehab their historic properties. And in return, they can receive quite a substantial property tax savings. And so it's administered by cities and counties. So cities have the option of whether or not to have a Mills Act program. And again, we chose to have one back in 2001. Next slide. Right now, the Mills Act program is administered through the Planning and Building Department, which is where I work. And we're actually allowed to have up to 60 new contracts per year. So typically, though, we get usually closer to 10 to 15 contracts per year. And right now we have 367 contracts throughout the city, which is actually the 3rd largest program in the state, just behind San Diego and Los Angeles. And that was an example of one of the lovely bronze Mills Act plaques that we still order for all the Mills Act recipients, and that they put up on their properties. So there are multiple benefits to the Mills Act program, other than the tax savings, which is always a great incentive. We've noticed that Mills-like properties really increase the value of the property itself and also the neighboring properties. So when homeowners start to take care of their properties, restore them, other neighbors start to do it as well. And it's sort of creates a domino effect of increased property values in our neighborhoods. And then there are also intangible benefits that we've seen. So since the packing house was restored, just in that short amount of time, I've noticed that a lot of people have been moving into the historic districts and restoring their homes because they want to have a part of that history of our city and be a part of that unique culture that Anaheim has. Next slide, please. So when we look at whether or not a property is eligible, because not everyone within the historic district is, we do a lot of archival research. So we look at any old photos or aerials that we can get a hand on. We also look at Sanborn maps, which were these fire insurance maps, to see how we can depict what the home or property looked like historically. So this is an example of what this house, the footprint used to look like. And you can see that that porch is still intact. And we look at that to make sure there aren't any major alterations before we decide whether or not we can let the owner pursue a Mills Act application. Next slide. And then we also do on-site inspections. So we will typically actually meet with the homeowner and talk to them about what would need to be done on the exterior of the house to be able to apply for the program. So I walk with them through all the restoration requirements and a list of items that would need to be restored. And then they get to work on all of that. And I guide them through that process as well. So this can be a really fun process actually, because I get to know the homeowners and how they use the home, which could be a great process for me. Next. And then the property owner also will work with Jane Newell over at our Heritage Center, and she walks the owner through how to put together a DPR form or historic survey to learn all about the history of the property, who used to live there, come up with a name for the house, and also a description of all the architectural features. So that's handed in as part of the Mills Act application as well. Next slide. And then we get to see all the wonderful before and after pictures. So we take before and after photos. And once the owner has completed all their rehabilitation and restoration items, then they're able to apply for the Mills Act. And next slide. If all goes well, they are awarded the contract, and then they're invited to a plaque ceremony in May for National Historic Preservation Month. And that's when the City Council will recognize all the new Mills Act recipients, and we'll invite the families to come out. And it's just a really fun time to acknowledge all of the hard work that goes into these applications. And then these are just some examples of recent award recipients. So in Anaheim, we have a lot of revival style homes, craftsman homes, and minimal traditional and even ranch styles. Next. And then we have a website as well that you can go to. So it's just anaheim.net/historic preservation. So we have a lot of information on there, not only about the Mills Act, but other facets of our historic preservation program, other resources that you can find, and then also frequently asked questions. And of course, you can always feel free to contact me if you have other questions about our program. And that's my email address and phone number. So, so that's where we are right now with our current state of historic preservation. And I'll hand it back to you, Nicole.
Thank you all so much. What an amazing program. And I believe now we will be opening this up to a Q&A.
All right. It looks like so far We actually have two questions, one in the chat and one in the Q&A box. The first is a question from an anonymous attendee. When will the Mills Act 2021 plaques be ready for payment and pickup?
Oh, my guess is that you're maybe one of the people who just received a Mills Act contract. So we're actually working on getting quotes right now. So probably within the next couple of weeks, you'll get notice about that.
Yay, that's exciting on all accounts for the recipient as well. And let's see, did I see one of our panelists have their hands up? Okay, no. We also have a question. Does the city have remedies to bring out of compliance properties into compliance? And this is a multi-question. Here we have a time frame. Is there a time frame to remedy? And what would trigger a delisting and resulting loss of tax reductions? Let me know if you need me to repeat any of that.
No, that's a good question. So every Mills Act program is different throughout different cities. In Anaheim, we do monitor our Mills Act contracts. Like Megan said, our Historic Preservation Committee helps us quite a bit with that. So we review all the inspection data, and then I'll work with any of those properties that need to get back into compliance for whatever reason, like peeling paint, or the landscaping is just out of control, or any TLC that needs to go on the property. So typically when I'll send them a notice, I'll give them 60 to 90 days, depending on the level of work that they need to do. And after that, they'll contact me and I'll re-inspect it and get them back into compliance. There will be sometimes owners who aren't responsive. And so I try to contact them a few times. And then what we've done in the past is actually share some of their tax savings, the actual amount that they're saving in their Mills Act program, to remind them of what they're saving and what may be jeopardized if they don't get back into compliance. So we have never revoked a contract as of yet. It would end up resulting in a pretty substantial fine, which is 12.5% of the value of the home. And so we do whatever we can to work with the homeowners to get back into compliance. Hopefully that answers all the questions.
That was so thorough. Thank you, Christine.
You're welcome.
We have a couple more questions. They're rolling in. So we have a question. Where is the award-winning plan available?
Megan, I can answer that. It's so if you go to the, I believe you probably have it on the Colony website too, but it's on the city website. It's the citywide historic preservation plan. So if you go to anaheim.net/historic preservation, and then you just click on, I believe it's citywide program, and then the plan will come up and you can click on that.
Wonderful. Does the city require a deposit for the historic designation process?
That's a great question. No, so we don't, currently we don't have any fees for historic designation or Mills Act application. So the only costs involved would be whatever it costs to restore the property up to what we need it to look like for the Mills Act. And then the owners actually do pay for their bronze plaques, but those are usually a little bit less than $200.
And could I add something?
Sure.
Okay. So I researched about 12 cities that had Mills Act programs, and some of the cities charged an application fee. Mm-hmm. And I thought about that. And I thought, do we want to encourage historic preservation, or do we want to make it hard to do? Mm-hmm. And so when I went to Lisa, I said, I don't think we should charge any application fee. And she agreed. And I'm glad to hear that that's still the case. That you don't have to pay. Amen. And I think that's one of the main reasons why the program is so successful. Even if you only ask for $200, that's $200 a lot of people who own these beautiful homes don't have. And so I think that it was a good decision.
Absolutely.
I love all of that. I live in Orange, in Old Town Orange, and we have a very similar program as well. And anyone that takes the time and the effort and the funds to restore their home and give it that TLC knows it is not cheap.
Right.
So it's definitely a labor of love for sure. We do have more questions. Let's see. So we have, what is the date that makes a home qualify for historic preservation?
Phyllis, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it's the usual year is 50. And Pasadena, for example, I don't know why, has 45 years. So in other words, if your house is older than 45 years old or 50 years old, you may qualify. But that's not the only criterion. But age is one of them. So if your place was built in 89, well, you'll have to wait a little bit.
I would specify too that, within our historic districts in Anaheim, there are certain, what we call periods of significance. So for example, in the colony, in order to be considered a historic structure that contributes to the colony historic district, your house would have had to have been built 1949 or earlier.
Right.
It also can depend a little bit on where your property is.
That makes sense. And I feel bad, a few comments have disappeared, but we are getting a lot of comments of gratitude and thanking all of our panelists here for your dedication. So I just need to make sure, in case any more disappear, you're aware that you're receiving a lot of love right now.
Thank you.
Well-deserved love. So we also have that you mentioned the houses take on a name. Could you elaborate on what goes into the name, and is the naming a requirement?
Megan, do you want to talk about that one?
Well, it is a fun conversation to have, because a lot of times people would like to name their houses after themselves. They say, well, I'm restoring it, I want my name on the plaque. But right. The guideline for naming your house is either the original builder or the most like culturally significant owner, or even a combination of, like, my house is called the Scott Lolly House. So the Scotts are the ones that built it, but there was this gentleman and his family, the Lollies, that moved in here, and he owned a jewelry shop downtown, and he had a big clock out front, and he wore a white suit, and he was on the council, and he was friends with Mr. Wrigley, and it was a whole thing. So when it came to naming the house, they named it the Scott Lolly House. So you are probably not going to get a plaque with your name on it. But the Mills Act contract will have your name on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good, Megan.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's so good. Wonderful. Okay. Does the city maintain a historic resource inventory as well?
We do, yes. So that's that list that has about 1,400 structures on it. So we maintain it. So occasionally properties are added. Sometimes, unfortunately, they have to be removed. But yes, and we have different classifications for what's on that inventory, but that can be found on our website as well. So
it sounds like I need to check out your website. This is
it's a helpful website, yes.
I'm actually ashamed I hadn't before I was introduced to all of you through all of this planning. So we have another question. How many homes in Anaheim have Mills Act contacts as compared with other cities?
Yeah, so Anaheim has about 370 Mills Act contracts. So that's the third largest in the state. I know that several cities have in the 200s. I think Santa Ana probably is in the upper 200s. The two cities that have larger MILSAC programs are San Diego and Los Angeles, and they are in the thousands. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we are in that.
Wow.
And I want to add also that I now live in Pasadena, and Pasadena, of course, is famous for its architecture and historic homes, but Pasadena has far fewer MILSAC contracts than Anaheim. So 3 cheers to Christine and her crew, and the interest of the people who live in these old houses and want the recognition that the houses deserve. So it's a great program in Anaheim.
Indeed. It looks like we have one last question. What would be the grounds for a home to be removed?
Removed from what?
I'm
MILSAC or demolished or what?
Removed from the earth. Probably removed from the Mills Act, they mean.
I'm assuming it means the Mills Act. Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, as Christine said, there have not been any removals. So the people that have the MILSAC contracts are being true to the contract terms and conditions, and they're maintaining their house. There was one, the White House, that's another story. It didn't want to have a Mills Act, didn't think it was having any tax benefits. But maybe Christine, you could enlighten me what happened with that.
Yeah, the White House is one of very few examples where the owner ended up asking to be removed from the program.
Right.
They were just no longer receiving a tax savings. So, so in that case, they just send a letter to the city, and then it actually takes 10 years to wind down from the contract. So I think they're in year maybe like 5 of the wind down.
Okay.
But that happens very rarely.
Right.
Usually, you know, in order to be revoked from a MILSAC contract, it would have to be pretty egregious. So, you know, if the owner does something like puts a large addition on the front of the house or makes it 2-story without, you know, any advice on the design, if they are completely out of compliance and just not responsive, in those cases, the city does have the ability to revoke a contract. But again, you know, thankfully we haven't had to go to that extreme.
That's good to hear. There's one question that actually was similar to a question I had, and really probably coming from a totally different mindset. But someone asked, have any of your houses been nominated due to historical significance based on who resided there?
Well, I think our best example of that would be Mayor Pearson's house, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was built in the 50s. So it wouldn't normally be considered, but because it was a mayor's house and it happens to be in the Hoskins district and it happens to be downtown, and it's a phenomenal house. It's like our only all brick house, I think. So it wouldn't fit in the box of qualifying just because of the year built or the location, but the most important thing is that it was Mayor Pearson's house. And we have Pearson Park named also after Mayor Pearson. Very popular guy. We even have Pearson Walk, a little sidewalk that goes through the neighborhood directly to the park.
I love that. And just really quick, the reason I was so interested in that is I am not ashamed to admit that I am a diehard No Doubt and Gwen Stefani fan.
Yeah.
And I have made many a pilgrimage to the Beacon Street house. And I have always wondered if that would ever be, you know, given the 50 years and et cetera, and the neighborhood that it's in, because that is, you know, it's on the cusp of antique and old. But I'm waiting for that to be eligible someday. Someday I may be an Anaheim resident. I'm on it. But
Oh my gosh. Well, Jamie, you know, Ohio Street is where they filmed Sunday Morning.
oh, I've been
And
to that store so many times.
yeah, yeah. So
Oh
there
my
you go.
God.
Phyllis is
No.
like, what are you guys talking about? I'll tell you later, Phyllis.
So sorry. I'm
No,
like,
it's
there's
okay.
gotta be some protection for that house. It
Well,
is iconic
well,
and
hold on
historic.
1 second. Let me think here. There's a couple of properties. I think there was a property on Rose Street that was moved that was said to be one of the Wright brothers owned the house, I think.
Yeah.
And right, Phyllis, isn't that on
No, not the Wright brothers, the singers.
The Righteous Brothers.
the Righteous Brothers? Thank you,
The
Jamie.
Righteous
Yes.
Brothers, yes.
Yeah. So we should have somebody make a collection of all of the famous people that have lived around here. Jamie, that's a great idea. Thank you.
No
Right,
problem. I would
but
love to
most of the
collaborate with you on
contracts-
this.
Most of the contracts are entered into because of their architecture,
Yeah.
not so much the famous person thing.
I believe that the Beacon Street house is that. I could be wrong. It's been a few years since I've stocked the house, but I believe it's kind of in a Cinderella home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1955. Yeah, the Cinderella Homes track.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I know we have yet to we have all these great little pocket neighborhoods. We have a lot of Cliff May homes, and we have the Cinderella homes, and we have I guess that'll be for the next generation to say, hey, save the vintage 50s houses,
Well, that's why we do presentations like this, right?
Yeah.
To engage, keep this going so that when we're no longer able to do it, there's others that are inspired.
Yeah, we're always looking for new people to get involved, I'd say, on the Historic Preservation Committee, especially since COVID. I don't think we've had anybody new join the committee. I don't know, Christine, in probably like 5 years or something. So, I mean, what do you think?
It was before COVID, so at least 3 or 4 years probably.
Yeah. So if you're interested in historic preservation in Anaheim and you'd like to, put some time in and join the committee, I mean, message Christine and she'll get you on the right path, because the more the merrier. We're not getting any younger here.
I'm so happy this came up though.
Me too.
To let people know that this is a communal effort, and it as an amazing job as you all are doing and have done. We the more the merrier. So
yeah, absolutely.
And we have one last question, I believe. And I'm so sorry, 2 last questions. You guys are popular. It says, the city acquired a very large amount of architectural salvage, such as windows, doors, building pieces, cabinets, etc., that for many years were stored in what is now called, and I apologize if I'm saying this incorrectly, the Make building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where is this stuff, and why is it not made available to homeowners who are restoring their properties?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not as aware about that. I know that it still exists, but I'm not exactly sure what the plan is with all of those salvage items. But
that's a great question.
Yeah, there were quite a few architectural pieces. I know the spire from Pickwick Hotel, even the bar from what hotel was it? One of our hotels was salvaged. It used to be an Anaheim brewery and was salvaged again.
Yeah.
We do have those somewhere, but unfortunately, I'm not the one that knows about what the plan is for those. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that one. But Keith, if you want to email me, I can take a look for you and see what's going on.
That would be a good project. Get them out of the building and get them out in public, you know? Put a
I feel like
display
we're
up.
just giving you all more work.
I know.
Like,
I'm like, oh, this
tell
is
us
great.
how we can get these celebrity maps, and yeah, but it's wonderful. The work never ends is
Yeah.
kind of the theme here. But we do have another interesting question. What about the Anaheim cemetery land being considered historic? That's a good one.
I think there's a cemetery district, isn't there, Christine? A whole group of people that preserve the headstones and tell the stories.
There is, yeah. And so, yeah, honestly, I'm not as familiar with that area either, but I do know that there are people that go out there and maintain that area. But I'm going to add that to my to-do list to look into as well.
Yeah, this is great feedback for things to work on.
This is interesting. The bar that was salvaged was taken from Walt's Covered Wagon,
Oh,
the Anaheim Brewery.
Wagon, that's right. Thank you.
Which is interesting. We have a lot of pieces here at Heritage Museum that came from that as well. Actually covered wagon pieces. My understanding is that Monkish didn't keep it and the city was supposed to reclaim and store it. Did that happen?
Yes, I do know that it was reclaimed and stored.
All right. Okay. My gosh. Just I hope our panelists are looking at the chat right now if you're able to. I think that this was very well received. You are getting all the love right now, and I think that and I love that, Marcia, that I think we all are going to take back more than 20%, Phyllis. I promise you that. I think this was fascinating. And we also have comments here in regards to the grassroots effort. And that's what really struck me at the beginning of this presentation. And yes, I love Gwen Stefani, I will say it, but truly, in all honesty, as someone that works in the preservation field and as a historian, you are the true heroes. I fully believe this. I think that preserving this history and heritage and culture and architecture, it goes so far beyond our industry here within the library sciences and museums. I'm seeing comments here that are, I love the Anaheim of my childhood, things like that. It touches upon nostalgia, right? And I think that deeply rooted inside of all of us is, you know, our love for history and passion for preservation comes from that nostalgia. And just in your presentations today, Diann, Phyllis, Meghan, Christine, you know, you've lived in homes that have been lived in by other people, some of which in this presentation. And it's just so fascinating to understand how it's all connected to us personally, but also as a community. And while I have this platform, I just want to also say thank you for your time, for the efforts that went into this from all over to collaborate for this moment, to share your history and your participation and accomplishments, because you have achieved so much here. So let's see. Oh, okay. I thought it was done. Sorry. We have a comment saying that there should be a statue of Diann Marsh erected in downtown Anaheim. So I must add this.
Yes.
So yes, I think with that, I will hand it over to, I believe we have Patricia.
Yes, thank you, Jamie.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Thank you for fielding all the questions, and to everyone who participated today. I'm sure I can speak for everyone here in saying that we're grateful to our knowledgeable presenters. Thank you so much, Diann, Phyllis, Megan, and Christine, for your thoughtful and fascinating presentations. We really appreciate the time and care that you took to inspire all of us to learn more about our county's history. We hope you all enjoyed your time with us today. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for future presentations and hopefully an Archives Bazaar in the fall. We are still looking for presentations, talks, workshops, panels, and other activities on the topic of activism and social justice movements in Orange County. Do you have experience teaching with primary sources in the classroom, or could you lead a virtual history crawl through an historical location in your city? Do you want to expand your understanding of what constitutes activism and social justice? Let us know. And I just want to remind you that the webinar has been recorded and it will be available on our website in the near future. The website is ocarchivesinAction@wordpress.com. And we will send a link out to all of the participants when it's posted. So we're glad you could join us today, and we'll hopefully see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Diann.
Bye, Diann.
Bye, Diann.
Bye, Phyllis.